On this episode of the Star Trek Universe podcast, we are talking about the very first episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, titled Second Contact. We'll be talking about that right after this commercial that we have absolutely no control over.
Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
And I am David C. Robertson.
Dave.
What's up, buddy?
So, I'm not a big cartoon guy. Like, not a big one. I like Rick and Morty, which this has some flavor of. But, like, I just couldn't stop smiling.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I know, like, it's not the best show ever, by any means.
No. Not yet.
I don't think it was bad. I don't think it was amazing. But, like, just from the very top, when you got the credits with the same font as TNG, and the music that's like has notes of the various series, but like subtle joke, not even subtle jokes, just jokes kind of sprinkled throughout. It just felt like I every time we do this podcast, every time we have new Star Trek to talk about, I am like, I just can't stop smiling. Like, even if it's not the best thing in the world, even if I know there are better shows, I just have such an affection for Star Trek that it's just great to live in this world for 30 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen, a lot of people complaining about this thing already. And, it does tend to be like, it's funny when you're on Facebook or whatever it is, and you see like CBS All Access puts up a teaser or something. You will see like the same 14 people in every post say, that's not Star Trek or something, similar.
Sure.
And you're just like, God, that's such a bummer because no, I watched the trailer and I thought, that doesn't look very good. I'll give it a shot though.
Yeah.
And I watched this episode and I had a few good, really good laughing moments. And then the rest of it was just fine. It was broad humor. Like when Star Trek does humor, it's generally pretty broad.
Right.
Trouble with Tribbles,
not
pretty broad.
Maybe not this broad though. Like this is going a little further in that in the ridiculous broad, like unbelievable, I guess. Like, it definitely goes further than we've seen on Star Trek before, which I don't mind.
Maybe it does, but some of those TOS broad comedy bits, like your Harry Mudds or your Cyrano Jones.
There is nothing in any Star Trek, and feel free to come up with something as silly as a monster with an asshole mouth firing a crewman up in the air over and over and taking off his underwear. And like, it's just nothing that broad and nothing that silly. Like, I hear you. I know you want to defend it as like, Star Trek can be anything, but like,
no, don't start painting.
This is going further. No, I'm saying what you just said. You're like, there's nothing. Like, you're trying to say, and don't. I'm not painting you. I'm talking about. I'm rebutting what you said. You were saying there's like Star Trek has all these broad moments, but it does not
really do
have anything this far. Now, a batleth slicing a person's leg like a piece of cake and me using that as a broad joke moment. Like, they're just, it's silly. It's silliness. And I'm not saying it's bad.
It's really silly.
Don't get me wrong. I just think it's like, it is a new direction for Star Trek. You cannot claim that this is like same old Star Trek. This is different. And that's a bad thing.
I am saying they can go bigger places with it. And if you're asking me if I consider it canon, no, I don't. But not within the normal universe. No, it is a little too broad and a little too comedic. A little too silly. I'm not buying it as canon, but I'm enjoying the hell out of it. And for what it's worth, I think this is where Star Trek needs to go. I don't think we need to, bear down and this is canon. And like, I've seen interviews now with Mike McMahon and we've seen him over and over again say like, this is canon. We're putting it into canon we're not trying to break canon. And I'm even a big fan of tonal shifts. Like I don't mind, tone being different. But I will say what I was trying to get at before is like there are parts of TOS that I definitely have a hard time justifying within canon, within like the universe. With the just like there are little moments in DS9 where the Ferengi get just a little ridiculous, a little too far.
Oh yeah, DS9 has its moments that are this silly, not this silly, but silly.
Yeah,
I don't want to spend this entire 30 minutes talking about canon, but I will say, I think for me, this falls in a similar realm as to everything else we've talked about when we talk about what bothers us when it comes to canon breaks and what doesn't. And I don't mind visual canon breaks. Like, it just doesn't bother me. It's like a different showrunners, different art teams, different whatever. Like, most visual things don't bother me. And I think because this is in a different medium and it's in a cartoon form, like, I don't mind until they do things that like really break the canon. Like, I don't mind considering this canon. Like, it's in any Star Trek show, when they're filming this, they would never show the character being tossed up in the air by the butthole mouth.
It's just a spider. It's just a spider's mouth. That's all it is.
Yeah, sure it is.
Doesn't have to be a butthole mouth.
That's how they get away with it, man. You're just don't.
I know the tricks. Shh.
The truth is out there, man.
The truth is out there. The truth is out there.
So I just like any other show would not have done that. So like if it was on a TV show with live actors, they might have had a similar spider fight. I can see a scenario where they'd have a spider fight, but they wouldn't do it as, as actiony and as like bouncy, and they wouldn't throw humans around, but that's just because of budgets, really. Like,
yeah.
And so I'm fine considering this some sort of canon. Like, if we learn things about the Federation, what's happening in the Federation in 20 whatever this is, then I'd be fine to be like, okay, that is what's happening in the Federation until I learn differently, until we have to come to that like crossroads. If they keep it within canon, other than that, I'm fine treating it as such.
It supposedly takes place 1 year after Nemesis. It is 2380.
Okay. So this is long before Picard, so it's well-trodden territory. But
it's not well-trodden territory. It's 1 year after Nemesis, so like we have not been here yet.
I just mean the general time period is well-trodden. Like, it's shortly after all the other stuff we've seen in the Next Generation sort of time period. It has a chance to blaze new canon in this territory of empty space between those 30 years or whatever.
Yeah, and I make the distinction because, I've already seen a lot of Trekkies kind of being like, well, this doesn't fit with this and TNG and blah, blah, like, this is after TNG. We haven't seen anything. Shut up.
Right.
Like, it has nothing to do. And, I think this show is definitely as good as Solar Opposites. If we're looking at the same line of like Rick and Morty type of shows. So far, it's not as good as Rick and Morty. This is Mike McMahon, the showrunner's Mike McMahon, who was the primary script editor, I guess, for Rick and Morty in season 1 at least, and is the co-showrunner on Solar Opposites. I think it's probably as good as Solar Opposites as we're comparing. I think this show, just watching one episode, I like the characters. I really enjoyed the little reveal that the main character is the captain's daughter, and that's sort of why she's after her so much. And I love the cyborg kid. I can't remember his name. I love how he keeps like switching into like desperate logical Vulcan cybernetic mode. I also love how he just totally screwed up that date with that girl because he was like, wait, why wouldn't she? And that wasn't even part of the cybernetics. That was just like, I just don't understand why she wouldn't want to know why a red alert would suddenly make it to where like
the system doesn't the protocol for getting to his door. Yeah. What I loved about that is, to me, that was also a little bit of a nod to how ridiculous it was that they were still having their date while all the chaos was going on. Because as a viewer,
I loved that.
My biggest thing was when they were still talking, like as the Star Trek geek and watching this to decide if it could be canon, almost like if it or does this fit with my conception of Star Trek? There's still that going on in my head, even though I'm going to give it a chance. And when they're like, these two Starfleet officers don't like put on their serious faces to battle what they need to do in that moment in the cafeteria, I was like, maybe not. Like, maybe not time for love, Dr. Jones, you know?
Yeah.
But then I liked it because, like, basically that's what he said at the end. He's like, there's no time for romance when this is going on. But it was like not even the action and the zombies. It was like when there's a level 2 diagnostic to be run. And I liked it because it showed a different thing that it reveals something about his character. You know, he cares about solving things. He's an engineer. So it's like, you think about Miles O'Brien or whatever, and like, maybe he wouldn't be distracted by a big fight scene because that's not his job. But
also, as he said, this happens every week. Who cares?
Right, exactly. So, but something breaks down, level 2 diagnostic to be run. He is in on that. You know, he's too distracted. No time for love. You know, like I was like,
right.
Okay, that's kind of nice. That's a nice character moment. And yeah, I like the breakdown of the two characters, the two sort of main characters, the one who's the sort of suck up and the one who's sort of a Starfleet, I don't know, resistance. Like she doesn't really like what Starfleet stands for, or at least like the rank chasing, I guess. It's not important to her, and she'd rather help people. And I loved the Starfleet is better with you in it at the end. That was a really nice moment.
And I really liked that she was like, no, dude, I was part of the first contact mission. I'm not selling them guns. I'm selling them supplies.
Yeah.
Because, you know, while we're screwing around, the bureaucracy is screwing around and taking its time. These people are starving, so they need help now. I really liked that. I thought that was really, really good. I like the just a small amount of, you know, moral high ground it's still Star Trek to some degree there.
Yeah.
And like the heart of Star Trek is still there, even though this is a goofy, silly thing.
Yeah, and you know, you compared Rick and Morty, and Rick and Morty is so much funnier, but it's also so cynical. And it's easier to be funny and cynical than it is to be funny and still try to be Star Trek, to like have a solid heart to your episode. Now, and that's not to say that Rick and Morty doesn't have a heart. It definitely does, but it's like a very cynical, dark heart. And this is still trying to be a lighthearted and sort of like good guys are good sort of show, you know? And that makes it harder, I think, to pull off what they're trying to do than Rick and Morty, where you can have Rick do the worst thing imaginable and he's still the guy you're following, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I do agree. It is easier to be funny and cynical than it is to be optimistic.
Yeah, talk to any 15-year-old. They don't know comedy yet. They only know sarcasm. And that's why they're such jerks and hard to deal with. We were all there. It's a thing. I mostly enjoyed this bit. There was a few bits where I was just like, that's obnoxious, but I don't really mind it. Even if you look at it and say it's not canon, like I do at this point, I'm saying it's not canon. I still enjoyed the hell out of it. It might be canon within a multiverse, you know, infinite probability or whatever, you know, everything's 100% probable within an infinite multiverse. That's fine. If you want to play that game, it's just an enjoyable show so far. Yeah, I think it's fun. I like it. Some of the humor was really great. There's some really nice moments. It was funny and also sort of took it off the rails at the end all the references to other shows, like all the characters. Like,
yeah, to me that was way more improbable than the butthole monster.
Exactly. Agreed completely that she's going to name all the famous crew members of Starfleet, and they're all just the ones we know.
Yeah, and I was going, yeah, okay, that's common history. Yeah. I mean, these are famous people.
And then she's like,
Gary Mitchell? Nope, I'm out.
Yeah, and then she says Deanna Troi, she wore jumpsuits at first. Like, what are you talking about? That is that's not history at all.
Yeah, no, this is a self-aware Star Trek show.
She wore jumpsuits at first. It's a really good joke. Joke.
Well, hey, unless somehow in the Star Trek canon, Captain Jellicoe or people who know of that incident went around talking about how Jellicoe made her wear a real uniform on the bridge. Yeah, I seriously doubt that that's common knowledge.
Yeah, that strains incredulity, as they say.
It absolutely does.
But very funny. Like, that is one of the funnier lines on the episode. I thought it's the very last line of the episode. That's great. Let's see. What are like? So you got any like favorite lines? Or I have one. I have one of my favorite line in the entire episode.
Go for it, man.
He's like, my bones hurt, and she says, the doctor will run a light over them. You'll be fine. It's so good.
I really liked the doctor screaming at Tendi. She hands her the beating heart and was like, pump this, don't pass out. Nobody's authorized to pass out.
I like that too. And then this was a very Rick and Morty joke, I thought, when she's pumping the heart and the guy is like, every time you pump it, it hurts.
I really like Jack Ransom going like, oh, what happened? Did I eat flesh? And they're like, hardly any. He's like, how much did I eat?
There's a lot of really funny lines in this. And yeah, I like it a lot. I do hope they're able to tie the stories together a little better to make, like, the thing that Rick and Morty does that's so beautiful is and the thing, honestly, that Star Trek does so well, and I'd like to see them kind of fuse this, is when Star Trek is operating at its best, it's taking a science fiction concept and using it to overlay a human, an element of humanity. You know what I mean? Like, really they're allegories, you know? And Rick and Morty does that same thing, but it does it in a twisted way that makes it funny. Right. And I felt like this was the humor in this show, in the first episode, felt like a series of jokes. Instead of, like, when I think of Rick and Morty episodes, I think of how the episode itself is a joke. And sure, there are jokes in it, but like the episode is thematically a joke. Yeah. In the way when I think about a Star Trek episode, I think about the fact that, like, that is thematically a parable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think they pulled that off with the first episode, but I think that marriage of those two things could be genius. But so far they have not done that, which is, it's the first episode. It's fine. I just think that is something that's missing a little bit from this concept so far.
Yep. I would agree with that. I do think, I think this show's biggest obstacle is going to be its attachment to the Star Trek name.
Possibly.
Just because of fans. Just because of
the gatekeeping fans. Sure. Those people are not going to like it anyway. But I immediately, while watching this episode, thought of like 3 people I was going to email it to. Like, like, I'm going to send this to friends and be like, here, use my password. Watch this. It's real. Like, friends that love Star Trek and love Rick and Morty. It's a good show for that, you know? And I think it's very likely when they were trying to conceive of what the show is going to be, they probably had some analysis of their fan base, and there's probably a lot of these like 30-year-old Star Trek fans that have missed Star Trek that are now into Rick and Morty. It's probably a lot of the same dudes, you know?
Well, we were just watching the cast and creators sit down and talk, and Mike McMahon was telling Will Wheaton that basically what happened was they like called him because they were like, hey, you're a guy, you know, you're a writer and everything, but you know, you're always making Star Trek tweets, and we want to know, you know, what your thoughts would be about an animated Star Trek. Like what would excite you as a fan? And he was like, oh, okay. And he like gives them his pitch. He's like, this is what I would want to do. And he explains it, and they were like, well, it sounds like we got another Star Trek show. And that's how he was hired, ostensibly.
That's awesome.
They were just like, hey, what would excite you in an animated show? And he tells them, they're like, cool, you're in charge of it.
Yeah. I really think that like, I mean, me and you are perfect examples of this. There's a lot of guys like me and you who grew up on Star Trek, have a lot of affection for it. A lot of people don't love the newest stuff they're doing, you know, with Discovery and even Picard. Like, sorry, I wanted to dive into like thoughts about Picard and Discovery, but there's lots of other episodes for that.
Haven't we done that enough?
Yeah, exactly. But like, there's a lot of people who don't love the newer stuff they're doing and maybe don't care anymore about what Star Trek is now. And they're just like, oh, a Star Trek show that's fun and funny that I want to watch because it's like Rick and Morty, but it has all the ships I know, and it's going to have references to my people, and Picard might show up or whoever, you know, like they might encounter actual crew members from, you know, the other series. Like, what if we got, you know, you think about like Futurama, where they had like those Star Trek episode or whatever, where they had all the voice cast, right?
Yeah, where no fan has gone before. It's fantastic.
If they did something similar where they got to meet all the Voyager crew and we got to find out what happened to them a couple years after they got home, you know?
That'd be fun.
It'd be so much fun.
We've heard that TNG people have kind of talked about maybe showing up on the show from time to time. You know, who knows? I'd be down for whatever. Yeah,
we've got 3 series worth of cast that could show up in this time period, and it would be freaking amazing.
And we know that they're not opposed to it. Yeah. Shit, the entire TNG crew shows up from time to time on Family Guy to make Star Trek jokes.
Exactly. Yeah, this is like voice acting is a great way for actors like that to get some work that's real easy a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And so, like, if the writers care and they coordinate well with whatever's going on the rest of the, you know, side, like you could easily see like a Captain Harry Kim showing up, like, or
right,
like he's on this legendary crew, but he still hasn't. Oh man, I just had horrible thought of what if Harry Kim still hasn't been promoted, and he's like, he like Harry Kim shows up as like still in the lower decks of another ship.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, honestly though, Harry Kim would be perfect because he'd have that conversation of like, I was an ensign for a real long time. You know, I feel your pain.
Right.
Not lower decks really, but you know, whatever.
No, I do think that Mike McMahon and company did a really good job of transplanting the spirit of that TNG episode Lower Decks to this series so far.
Oh, neat. In Lower Decks, the episode, did they share a room like that?
I don't remember.
Or did they have their own rooms, or did they not show it? I was interested in that. Like that was one piece of canon that we got this episode that I don't think we've ever gotten before, is that they all have clearly it could be different for different ships and different time periods.
I mean, the Enterprise is like, you know, Galaxy class luxury liner,
right?
Flagship.
Damn, look at that flag shit over there.
But yeah, I thought a lot of that, like, we're gonna sit in Tin Ford and argue about, like, I always love stuff like that. Like the thing that I love that episode of TNG because it's just like, hey, we're ensigns and we're like talking about people that we as an audience get to see all the time, And we're like, they're not like that. You guys have a totally skewed view of them. Well, yeah, because they're like the guys in the lower decks. Like they're just terrified of all these like swaggering douches on the bridge. So I really like that. Just like I love that episode of Buffy the Zeppo where the whole thing just follows Xander's adventure while everyone else with powers are dealing with their like apocalypse.
Yeah,
and in the
I think that, like the Hellmouth is opening again, which was like the season ender of season 1, I believe, or 2, I don't know. And they like have that go on in the background while Xander's having his own wacky adventure.
Yep, there's like
so
tentacles and all sorts of crazy stuff in the library, and they're like running around with swords, and I think Xander's having like a hair pulling fight with Harmony.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's great.
Well, I love that. I love it a lot. And this definitely has that potential. But the question is, how old does that joke get? And then like, this is interesting because I feel like they're already setting up an arc for these characters. Like clearly they already kind of went through an arc in this episode. Their relationship did. And they're definitely setting up these characters to, you know, one is the one that is talented but resistant to the system, and one is all about the system but maybe not that talented.
Yeah. I kind of felt like the guy that's all about the system and all about the rules. I feel like they were the fans. They're the Trekkies who are like hard bound by what they feel is canon and what they feel is the proper tone of a Starfleet vessel and a Star Trek show. And I think that's what they were doing. That
could be. That definitely like tracks with what they're doing for sure.
And by the way, I loved this. I hated it at first when you see like bridge crew members like Ransom and whatnot being like, yeah, we're gonna go drink some beer or whatever it was.
I thought it was great.
And you're thinking like, that's not how anybody acts on a Starfleet vessel. And then they get to the bridge and they're like, Captain, we are doing the blah, blah, blah. It's like they just totally like turn it into like really super PC, like really cool, calm, Vulcan-esque, like TNG era, like Starfleet officer while they're on the. I just loved that. I was like, oh my God, this really the difference between like Riker when he's on shore leave running around with his nipple exposed.
That wasn't like, shore leave. That
wasn't shore leave. No, but he was like off the clock or whatever.
No, you're right. No, it wasn't. It wasn't on the ship. It was on that planet.
Yeah, actually, the nipple exposed where it was all women. Yes, but
that's right.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like he's like Riker running around with his little like, I'm going to go to Risa and put out this statue that I got Picard to get me so that the women will come and have sex with me. Like it's totally like, or like the episode The Game where he's like just running around half naked with that lady and they're playing the game. Like that's just totally like dude bro bullshit that Riker would do. But on the bridge, he's like all stiff and angry.
It also fit well with the DS9 model too, which they get pretty silly off the clock.
Yes.
And then they, mostly straighten up when it's time to go to action or whatever.
Bashir and O'Brien were the first people I thought of.
Yes, absolutely.
When watching all of these people.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm also thinking of Sisko cooking Cajun food. Because he just becomes a different person during that.
Kim in Paris.
Yeah.
Yep. So one of the jokes that I really laughed at, way too hard, my wife gave me a look, was like when they were in the holodeck and like they're all choosing like these wonderful, wondrous experiences. And he's like, show me the warp core.
Yeah, I laughed hard at that. You're right. He is the fans. Yeah. Where is your happy place, Dave?
Where's my happy place?
Where's your happy place? Probably somewhere on the Enterprise, right?
I don't know. I don't know where my happy place is. I couldn't tell you.
All right. Well, anything else you feel like we need to touch on this particular episode?
No, I want to say give it a shot, and if you don't like it, stop going around telling people it's not Star Trek. Nobody gives a shit what you think. Let people enjoy things.
Yeah, like it's Star Trek. It may not be your canon or whatever, but it's Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's Star Trek for sure. And
the people who own Star Trek say it's Star Trek,
right? Well,
so that means it's Star Trek.
That's what they want you to think, because they want you to buy their shit. Bullshitters.
Yeah, which is exactly what Roddenberry did back in the day.
Oh yeah, the bullshitter number one.
That's right. He was the first. I'm not kidding. He was the first.
So. You guys should definitely check it out if you haven't. If you've listened this far, it really is worth a watch. You got to go in with the expectations set to, I don't know, set to stun or something. It's not like going to be. It's not mind shattering, like whatever. But it's good. It's good. It's funny. Yeah. It's a fun time.
I love the fact that they couldn't phase the giant butthole spider. Because it would sour the milk.
Yes, that's very funny. It was very funny when she was like, "What if it sours the milk?" He's like, "Do these things have milk?" And she's like, "I don't know, probably." And then just a little bit later, an alien runs up. "Don't shoot it with your phaser; it'll sour the milk."
Yeah, and of course, like the little farmer alien, and of course he's got like a southern accent, like a southern North American southern accent. Like, don't do that, it'll southern that milk.
Yeah, it's just really funny the way he says it. It'll sour the milk. I don't know. It was very, very funny. Funny show, guys. Funny show. Like thinking about it and and repeating some of these lines has me laughing even harder. I'm excited for next week's. I really am.
Yeah.
So, guys,
down.
Please check it out. We'll be back to talk about it next week. We'll be following along with this, and then immediately into Discovery Season 3, right?
After Lower Decks.
Yeah, that's crazy. There's like 20 something weeks of Star Trek in a row.
23.
I dig it. I'm excited. I did want to mention here at the end, as a little plug, you guys heard, if you listen to the podcast, you heard the 20 weeks worth of Star Trek songs that I wrote and posted here on the podcast. Well, it is that time when I'm actually trying to produce them. I started an Indiegogo this week. To try to fund producing physical copies, and I got this super badass t-shirt that is in the works. I'm going to show it to you right now, Dave. See what you think.
Okay.
Wait.
You're going to put me on the spot on the air? I'm going to have to lie.
I know, that's why.
Okay.
I only want a good opinion. I don't want an honest one.
Oh, damn it, man.
No, hold on. I got to send it to myself.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
No, I'll just Facebook it to you. That'll work.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I just sent it to you on Facebook. Tell the people how cool.
I'm going to tell the people.
My t-shirt is.
No, I like it, man. I do.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really cool t-shirt. Buddy of mine is working on it. Gonna clean it up a little bit, but it's like The Garage, which is the band name, all done with like different geeky properties. I really, really like it a lot. So
yeah, it looks good.
The Garage is my geeky band, and we're putting out these 20 songs that we did for Star Trek Picard. On this here podcast, we're putting them out as a double album, and you can order a copy or just support the project over at Indiegogo. You can find the link at strandedpanda.com/new album. That's what it is. strandedpanda.com/new album. It's like $20 to get the double album, $40 to get the double album and a t-shirt, and there's things above that too. So if you got a chance, please go check that out. It's got like 30 more days left. I'll be mentioning it on the cast over the next few weeks because I'm trying to get a little funding to honestly just pay for the production, like what I've spent so far, basically. So hope I can make that happen, because then I can keep making music, and that's right. What I'd like to do.
Come give your quarantine rations to Matt.
Yes, please. Yeah, obviously, if you got the means, So some people do not have the means currently, and I am one of those people, which is why I had to do an Indiegogo.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to create like a situation where you had to talk about a thing as far as like an issue, because we all know what's going on in the world right now. I just really wanted to say quarantine rations.
Yeah, I get that. What's you got anything you want to plug here at the end? You got any shows? Have you talked about Bond here? Breaking Bond here?
I don't think we've talked about Breaking Bond here. My wife and I, we have very little history with the James Bond franchise, but we have been going back and watching all of the movies, and we are like 10 of the Eon Productions ends. We've also talked about the 67 Casino Royale, and like the very first filmed Bond where they had an American James Bond is really interesting. Or the show was interesting. I don't know that our podcast was.
I've enjoyed all of them that I've listened to.
We have some listeners who have enjoyed it, but yeah, it's called Breaking Bond. It's me and my wife just talking about James Bond, giving our favorite quotes, giving some trivia that we found interesting. And of course, I'm co-host on DC on Screen, and DC Fandom is coming at the end of the month, and is with all the Snyder Cut stuff with Justice League, and all the crazy news coming in about Michael Keaton and the Flash movie, and we've had a lot to talk about lately, and it's been a lot of fun.
That sounds awesome, man.
DC on Screen.
I've been so busy, I haven't gotten a chance to. Well, there's two things. I've been busy making stuff, but making this album and making too many podcasts.
Right.
But I've also I don't drive anymore because I haven't left my house in 6 months. So I just don't. Yeah, that's right. 2 months before the quarantine started, I just decided not to leave my house anymore. But no, it's wild. So I'm such a podcast addict. I listen to podcasts constantly when I'm on the road, and normally I drive, 15 hours a week, and suddenly I'm just like not driving at all. So it's been crazy.
Yeah, I was driving today and was listening to one of the podcasts I listen to regularly, Fans Without Borders. Yeah, and they I felt really bad because I was listening to it, and then Brent was one of the co-hosts, was like, oh yeah, this week, like just yesterday, I was on DC on Screen for episode 600, and they said very nice complimentary things about me and about my co-host and about our show. And then Ray was like, oh yeah, that's the other co-host, was like, I haven't listened to him in a while, but I did enjoy this and this and this, and they just said so many nice things, and I was like, well, I had no idea this was a thing. I should thank them, but by doing so, I have to admit I haven't been listening to their show. It's like, hey, remember 2 months ago?
Yeah, I think all of us understand, especially with quarantine stuff, that we're all behind on all our content. I got messages today from 2 different people who wrote about the MCU cast, the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. They wrote us and said, hey guys, I really enjoyed the last 3 months of content. I had a 10-hour drive today. There were 2 people had this same message. One was 10 and one was like 15, but they were like, listen to you guys for 10 hours today. Listen to like the last 3 months of podcasts. And I was like, wow, that is too much of me for sure.
I agree.
Well, I think they mixed in our Umbrella Academy coverage, which I was not on much.
Oh, okay.
I was on 2 episodes. I started it and ended it with them. But Jeff Randall, Matthew West Fox, and Ashley Coffin took Umbrella Academy seasons 1 and 2 and did them on Pandavision this week. Have you seen Umbrella Academy?
No.
It's good. It's real good.
I'm sure.
There's too many things to watch.
Yeah, I keep hearing, people argue over which one's good, Doom Patrol or Umbrella Academy, and I'm like, well, I mean, Doom Patrol's fantastic.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you about Umbrella Academy. I guess I take it they're both just very odd shows.
Yeah, I think they're both like superhero teams that are sort of offbeat, sort of humor and, that sort of thing. So I think that's why they get compared. Yeah. Sort of like The Boys and Watchmen. Like people compare those properties because they're, both dystopian superhero things.
Yes, but I'll tell you this: I have grown really sick of seeing. I've really grown sick of social media,
Sure.
and I have been trying to figure out a way to like market our shit without actually being on social media, and I don't think it's possible. To like talk to people and just not make yourself available to them. I'm really tired of seeing this property is greater than this property, as if, that's some objective thing. Like,
Yeah, people can say their opinions though. I mean,
yeah,
we do it. At least I do.
We do.
You often push back. Honestly, you are a strict non-objectivist.
well, yeah. And the older I get, the more I look back at the things that I either liked or disliked, and I find that I've changed my opinion
Sure.
for various reasons. So, as something I've been talking about on DC on Screen a lot lately, or somewhat lately, is, I used to be the entitled fan, the fan who was just angry about everything that was different than what I thought it should be, and that's just not fun.
Yeah.
And it's unfair to the people. It's unfair to expect writers and actors and all of these people making stuff to like adhere to such strict horse shit.
Sure.
And it's just
there's a difference between like not liking something because it's not exact. I think you're right. I think that's a bad reason not to like something because it doesn't match what was the version that was in your head. But there are legitimate reasons to like and dislike things.
Yeah, and I'm still very willing to say, oh no, this was shit because this, and this. But if someone comes at me with a different opinion, I'm like, that's cool. I don't want to fight about it.
And you can always go back too. Like you said, you change your opinion on something. You can always go back and go like, I really didn't like this at the time. Everyone always shits on, we just rewatched Age of Ultron a couple weeks ago. And everybody always shits on that because it's generally considered the worst of the Avengers movies of the four. And I watched it the other day. It's so fucking good.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's Joss Whedon operating at a very high level, making like really, really wonderful moments. And he builds a tense moment and cuts it with a joke better than anyone else, or cuts it with a poignant moment. Like, it's just so good. But it wasn't as. I think it had a similar problem to the Matrix trilogy, where the Matrix 1 was so mind blowing that nothing the Matrix 2 or 3 could do could ever live up.
Yeah, as Jason and I say about that movie in particular, there's no way they were going to shine that shoe again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. And I think that's the same thing with the Avengers. I think no matter who made the second Avengers movie, no matter what they did with it, I think that, and I think Age of Ultron has its problems. I think for one thing, the name of it, it's silly because it's like the Weekend of Ultron, but whatever.
There was also that was like Whedon's version of Snyder's Justice League, where like the studio came in and was like, you have to do this and this and this. And he's like, I don't want to do those things. And they're like, no, but you've got to set up this. So like, one of the big things in Age of Ultron was like
the Thor's stuff,
Thor's trek into having the visions and stuff. And I'm like, oh, it's like BVS with the nightmare sequence.
Yeah.
It's like no one knew what it meant. Or how it related to anything.
Doesn't relate to this movie. Why is it here? And I think that's totally fair. And I think there's some, like I said, I think it has its problems, but overall, a really, really great movie. And it's just like, I think that you just couldn't, I don't know. I never hated it like a lot of people did, but like I think just going back and with the context and without all the weight on it, where it's having to follow up, or it's a lot of its expectations. You have these expectations when you're going into the second Avengers movie that's going to be the best thing since Avengers, and it's hard to meet up with that or better than the Avengers. And then you go into you go in years later with the knowledge that people dislike this one, and then you watch it again, you're like, oh yeah, this is great. When Vision hands Thor the hammer, so fucking good. It's just such a great moment.
And, honestly, all of that, just sort of pains me because as a director, I generally love Joss Whedon, and, all of this stuff coming out now that might, or, that he was a certain way. And
yeah, apparently he can be an asshole, and maybe worse. Depending on what you. I don't know. I don't want to get too far into it because I don't know everything.
Yeah, we don't. But ugh.
But
anyway,
it's that's that classic like separating the art. I was actually thinking about this earlier. I was listening to some podcast and they're talking about our founding fathers, like of our nation, and they're talking about the fact that they were slave owners, and how like that we shouldn't care anything about what they said, mm-hmm. And like I get it, I get that like that impulse, but I am very familiar with the idea of disliking the artist but liking the art.
Yeah.
And like while the Constitution and stuff has its problems, and the Revolution and all of that has its problematic areas, especially around race, like mm-hmm. It's still like, trying to create the idea of democracy. You know what I mean? Like, it's
right.
Like, I'd never thought about those two things at the same time, but it's like, it really is kind of the same thing. It's like, yeah, George Washington, apparently a real asshole around problems of race and like around slavery, but mm-hmm. like he still fought to like invent democracy, like in like in a large way. And then like so you gotta like, okay, well, he, so good things and bad things. There's good things and bad things in people. Sometimes they're horrible in their personal life, but they have an overall good effect on the world. And I think Joss Whedon sounds like he has some pretty problematic stuff going on in his life, but like he mm-hmm. still made some good art,
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to say that about Lower Decks. They're to me, I kind of always thought Buffy and Angel was just kind of cheesy and ridiculous until I started seeing season 5 stuff from Angel season 5, where mm-hmm. Ben Edlund, the guy that created The Tick, kind of brought in and just like really opened up those comedy doors. And for me, that opened so much up to the universe. Like, it made me accept seasons 1 through 7 of Buffy that I had not seen, and made me go back and watch everything and look at it through that prism of, oh, this is a universe where a demon can inhabit a puppet.
Right. And I think it's because, like, when I heard about Buffy, when I was, mm-hmm. 13, when it was on the air, the people who liked Buffy and Angel together. Like, mm-hmm. that was the whole reason they watched the show. At least that's what I thought at the time. Like, I'm watching, I had a lot of girlfriends, not girlfriends, but friends that were girls who
gal pals.
I had these gal pals who freaking loved Buffy, and they mm-hmm. would talk about it at school every day, and like, I thought, because all I saw were the like promo images of them like it looked like a romance cover or whatever, right? And I was like, oh, that looks really lame. And then I regret it so hard, because like those were probably the coolest gals, like they were into some shit that I wouldn't get into for another like 10 years.
Right, they were headed. They were probably into it for the wrong reasons, though. If they were shipping Angel and Buffy that hard,
maybe. No, when I watched it, I shipped them too. Like I cry when she stabs him through the heart. Like.
Oh no, yeah. Just because you don't ship them doesn't mean the emotions aren't real. Doesn't mean you don't feel the emotions. I didn't ship Buffy with anyone because I was just wanting Buffy to be at a point where she was strong enough to realize that she didn't need a man.
That's right. She was cookie dough, though. She just had to realize she was cookie dough.
She wasn't through baking.
All right, everybody. Well, that was 30 minutes on Lower Decks and 20 minutes on everything else that just happened to pop into our head. Hope you enjoyed it, because this is all staying in.
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying, though, is like there's a possibility that Lower Decks opens up a lot of that TOS humor for me in a way that I can just be like, oh, okay, I'm down with it. This is all just ridiculous and craziness.
Maybe you can open up your own conception of what Star Trek could be. That's neat. I like that. I like it. That's a good note to end on.
Mm-hmm.
Go to strandedpanda.com, find all our other podcasts. Go to strandedpanda.com/new album and get the new album. the Star Trek album. That you guys are
Yes.
literally the audience I made it for. So
Yes.
if you're up for it, it would really help if you could support it.
Go find Matt's album, find my podcast, find Matt's podcast, suckle our downloads with your voluptuous lips.
Yeah, with that. Never mind.
I don't know.
I can't do it. I respect that you went there because I'm far too embarrassed to say things like that. All right, everybody.
If you use a phaser on the downloads, it'll sour the milk.
Don't use a phaser on the downloads. Stop all the downloading. Don't stop all the downloading. I'm a computer. Jolan True.
My bones hurt.
Thank you for listening to the Star Trek Universe Podcast, a Stranded Panda production. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv for his web videos. If you'd like to hear more from Matthew Carroll, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or listen to his music. Just search for Matthew Carroll anywhere you get music.